Hello everyone, how are you? This is our live YouTube channel. Welcome everyone. Today we will talk about qualitative content analysis. For more videos from the first grade until the 10th grade for the Jordanian curriculum, you can click on the playlists which is on our YouTube channel. Okay, so let's start our video today, which will focus on the qualitative content analysis. Before we read this book, I'd like to highlight some things here regarding the qualitative content analysis. First, this content analysis or this research technique focuses on content, focuses on the rules, models, themes, ideas. It also focuses on comparing and contrasting the group differences, the differences among groups. It highlights, compare, and contrast. Its main aim is developing new theories, exploring new topics. Is it widely used in social work? Yes, it is very used, or it is used widely in social work. As for the research technique, of course, it is qualitative. It's not quantitative. And as for the epistemological foundation, it is constructivist. Okay. As for the coding scheme, it is both, or it uses both inductive and deductive coding schemes. As for the statistics, they are not found here. Sometimes it can be found, so we can describe it as rarely used. Okay, so statistics are rarely used here. There's a focus on reliability and validity. And as for the research designs, we've got three main research designs used here by the qualitative content analysis. Okay, so let's start our chapter today. Okay, this chapter will focus on the same components found in the first two chapters, which are the research purposes. We will talk about the epistemological issues, the research designs, the target audiences, some ethical issues regarding the approval of participants, and sample issues and methods, collecting data, coding methods, data analysis methods, and the role of researcher reflection. Okay, let's move on to the introduction. Here, what we should know is that this research approach, as Marion describes it, a set of techniques. So it is a set of techniques for the systematic analysis of texts of many kinds. So it can be of different kinds. It does not address only the manifest content, but also the themes and the core ideas found in techniques as primary content. So we've got the manifest and the themes and core ideas. So we're highlighting both of them. What is the direct meaning and what is the theme or the core idea of all the text we've read. Okay? And it says here, as the name implies, qualitative content analysis does not employ statistical analytical methods. Yeah. Okay. Let's go down here. It talks about the discourse analysis within this research technique. It says that the focus of discourse analysis and the conversation analysis is on the elements and forms of speech, in contrast to the focus on meaning in content analysis. So we're not focusing on meaning, we're focusing on analyzing the elements and forms of speech. Okay, and let's go down here. Here it says, drawing broadly on Habermas, critical theory studies use interpretation to explore the meaning of text and symbolic expressions, including interpretation of text that interpret still other texts. Okay. Here it says something about the ground theory method. Glaisher's and Stroh's ground theory of 1967 may also be used in content analysis. However, the research purpose of ground theory is what? So what is the purpose of the ground theory? The purpose is to generate locally applicable concepts and theory, while content analysis focuses more on description and generally does not seek to develop theory. There's a difference here between the ground theory and the content analysis. The content analysis always focuses on description. It describes the textbook ahead of you, and it does not seek to develop theory. This is the main content analysis. However, in the ground theory, we do generalize concepts, new theory. So it is, we can say that, you know, the qualitative content analysis is similar to the ground theory, because here we are exploring new theories and new topics, and, you know, we're not explaining the hidden meaning, we're not presenting the material as it is, just like in basic content analysis. Here we are exploring, we're doing something innovative. Okay, it's something that shows innovation, the innovation of the author. So here in this stage, it is more, it is a complicated, you know, stage where the author shows his experience and his knowledge. Okay. Now here, what researchers vaguely label as thematic analysis may be most similar to contemporary qualitative content analysis. Here, at the end of this paragraph, before going to the next part, it says here, summarizing meaning in primary or secondary data is the focus of thematic analysis. As for the thematic analysis, you know, as the name implies, it concentrates on themes. So here we summarize meaning in the thematic analysis through summarizing the meaning found in primary or secondary data. Thematic analysis may be an early underdeveloped variant of contemporary qualitative content analysis. Some historical perspective about the qualitative content analysis, how it appeared. Here it says that the distinction between quantitative and qualitative approaches to content analysis has long been the focus of academic discussion. Many books were written on this theme, you know, the distinction between the quantitative and the qualitative. The quantitative, we're focusing on the quantity compared to the quality in qualitative. Okay, so here it says that Croker argued that quantitative approaches to content analysis were often limited. He argued 3 key points about the quantitative analysis. He says that meaning is not always manifest. Okay, it's not necessary to have a manifest meaning or an overt meaning. Meaning is often complex. Okay, so meaning is not always manifest. This is the first thing. Meaning is often complex and contextual, so it depends on the context. So it is very complex. You have to understand the context in order to understand the meaning intended. It is best determined how? Holistically. And the third one is that some meaningful content may appear only once in a text, which does not necessarily mean it is not important. Okay, or meaningful. For these reasons, he argued for developing qualitative approaches to content analysis. That's why, so these are, we can summarize these as the reasons for the emergence of qualitative content analysis. So the reasons for the emergence of this approach is that we have complicated meaning, we have contextualized meaning. It is not an easy task to understand the hidden meaning in the context. So there was a need for the qualitative content analysis. Okay, and meaning is not always manifest, so there was a need for understanding the hidden meaning. That's why researchers tended to use the qualitative content analysis that can cover all these aspects that were not covered by the quantitative content analysis. Also, another researcher whose name is Ritzert, 1972, he pointed out two additional limitations to basic quantitative content analysis. What is the other point he mentioned? He notes, what does he note? He notes that the distinctive nature of individual cases may be lost in manifest content analysis. And that communications that do not appear overtly in the text may be overlooked. Omissions of expected content, removal of content, require contextualized analyses. So these critiques that helped the emergence of the qualitative content analysis actually addressed several aspects of content analysis process. Coding becomes more complex when you have a difficult process in understanding the meaning or extracting it. Of course, coding will be hard. So the coding becomes more complex if not all meaning is manifest or literal. And both interpretive and qualitative content analyses share this concern. This is found in both interpretive and qualitative content analyses. So further, if meaning is contextual and complex differences in interpretation may be more common in qualitative content analysis. Let's go to George here in 1959, who argued also for a non-frequency. So this is another reason for the use of qualitative content analysis. He said that he wanted an approach that does not focus on the frequency of words in the text. So he argued for a non-frequency approach to content analysis. His work analyzing Nazi propaganda made clear that meaning was often complex, contextual, and latent. When you analyze, texts related to war, you should understand the hidden meaning, because soldiers using such communication means intend to use latent meaning in order to not to be discovered, and to hit correctly, to achieve their goals. Okay, let's go now to the last paragraph here. It says, if a qualitative content or if a qualitative approach to content analysis is needed, what would such an approach need to include? To begin, the role of content in qualitative content generally must be examined. Okay, so let's start with the first section here, the general role of content in qualitative research. We said that content is very important here. Okay, so what should we understand about content here in qualitative content analysis is that methods can describe content, summarize key themes, examine content delivery, or conceptualize content. Here we can use in the qualitative approach, we can use thematic analysis, consensual analysis, which are similar to this approach. Okay, here it says that it is fair to argue that virtually all qualitative research addresses the content of texts, whether the texts were books, images, whatever form. Content is very important. So this is the first thing to know, is that content is very important, whatever the communication was, whether it was a file, a textbook, a video file, or other media. Qualitative research methods may describe the content found in texts, or they may summarize the key themes found in texts, or examine the process or form of delivery of content, or seek to develop a conceptualization of the content. So all that, is related to the content itself. That's why it's so important. Okay, let's go to what is the qualitative content analysis. But before that, let's go to this point. We should understand that there are some variations evident within a particular named research method, that Schreier listed 11 named variants. So these are some variants, some kinds or subcategories, we can say, of qualitative content analysis that she found in the international interdisciplinary literature. These ranged from content structuring analyses, so other names we can say, or other variants of the qualitative analysis is the content structuring. So we can call it content structuring, or we can call it analysis of images, evaluative content analyses. We can call it also directed analysis and summative content analysis. So these are variants of qualitative content analysis, and it has also developers and advocates, each with somewhat different emphasis and research purposes, of course. Let's go now to the definition of this method. How can we define it? You know, we should understand that here in this approach we do not focus on the latent meaning. We only focus on two things: the manifest meaning, the themes, ideas, contextual information, and the latent content, and the formal aspects of the content. So we've got different things. So we're not talking about the manifest or the latent alone. We are also, exploring themes and ideas. That's why the main aim of this approach is to explore and to provide new theories. Okay, so as for the definition, we've got Marrying. Who's Marrying? A German psychologist, okay, who appears to have first used the term in 1983, okay, states that qualitative content analysis is a set of techniques for the systematic analysis of texts of many kinds, addressing not only manifest content, but also the themes and core ideas found in texts as primary content. Okay, so we're focusing on the manifest, on the latent, on the themes and core ideas. Contextual information and latent content are included here. Okay, very important to have these contextual information. So that's why context is very important, both content and context. Okay, analysis of the formal aspects of the content may also be included. That's okay if we analyze the formal aspects of the content. Okay, let's go now here to a piece of information on validity and reliability, because both are emphasized here. We do emphasize them in the qualitative content analysis rather than credibility and trustworthiness. So we focus on validity and reliability more than credibility and trustworthiness, or rather than. Okay, this shows the use of constructivist epistemology. Do we use statistics here? Okay, I have mentioned earlier that they are rarely used. Further, the model allows for exploring the complexity of communications in ways that may not be possible through quantitative approaches. So, now let's go to the last part of the second paragraph. Here it says that qualitative content analysis may be used to explore new topics, describe complex phenomena in open systems, compare and contrast group differences, and develop and test theories. This is the main difference between this content analysis and the previous ones. Okay, this one here, there is a room for innovation of the author, of course. Here you can compare and contrast group differences and develop and test theories. You're not only testing, you're also developing new theories. Okay, let's go to drawing on the work of Alfred here and Morgan. She describes qualitative content analysis as a form of analysis of verbal and visual data oriented towards summarizing the information content of the data set. Okay, and another person here describes that in here researchers here in this approach, they typically inductively generated codes from the data rather than apply deductively generated codes derived from prior theory and research. So it's important to know that here in this approach we use the inductive codes more than the deductive ones. This allows data collection and data analysis to be undertaken simultaneously and flexibly in order to capture context and nuance. Now, however, in contrast to basic and interpretive approaches, here we're comparing between this research technique and the first two. Here we have a description of patterns and regularities found in the data is the goal of qualitative content analysis. Okay, so it's important to focus on this point that we are here describing, okay, the material you want to analyze. Okay, here let's go to the next page. We will talk about, we'll focus on Schreier, who states that qualitative content analysis seeks to expand on the textual data on which it is based, in contrast to the data reduction purpose of basic content analysis, and qualitative content analysis may actually expand on or enlarge the original data. This is one key difference between qualitative content analysis and the basic and interpretive approaches. I have forgotten to include that here in the Word document at the beginning of this video. We should understand this point very clearly. You know, there is an expansion feature for the qualitative content analysis because you're expanding, you're talking more, you're providing a new theory that was not, you know, provided before. So you should expand, you should explain, and you should talk more on your new theory. Overall, qualitative content analysis refers to what? It refers to a systematic method for searching out and describing meaning. So you're not explaining meaning, you're describing meanings within texts of many kinds with a focus on context and content. What do we use? Do we use only the manifest? We use both the manifest and latent content analysis as our meanings in context. Oddly, researchers do not explicitly address issues of epistemology in qualitative content analysis literature. There's not much talk about it, but we should understand that it follows the constructivist approach. Okay, Schreier appeared to represent constructivists' epistemological stance, emphasizing multiple perspectives and the importance of researcher interpretation, the lack of attention to the shaping role of epistemologies. It needs further development. Let's go to some examples on the qualitative content analysis. Examples, we've got 2 examples, and I will provide you with a summary on the 2. We will focus on Chan et al. And his study on the 15 Hong Kong Chinese caregivers. And the first one is a description of youth media programs under the social work abstracts database. So the first one here, okay, let's read it. The social work abstracts, this is the first example on the qualitative content analysis. Okay. The first example is the social work abstracts database, which showed 30 qualitative content analyses as of March 2015. Just notice, that we've got very limited number of studies, on the qualitative content analysis or which adopted this approach. Researchers will find many more qualitative content analyses in the larger databases of other professions. Okay, so the first example is Johnston, Goodstar, Richard Schuster, and Sethi in 2014, who examined what? They examined the online mission statements and written descriptions of youth media programs. Their research questions included: how do youth media practitioners articulate their work? What frameworks do they use? So they focused on their work. How did they analyze their work? How did they describe the youth media programs, the characteristics of youth, and and their participation in media? So, how do youth media practitioners articulate their work? Okay, and another question they examined is the frameworks they used in that study. Okay, now the limitation here is that they noted, the authors, they noted the need for further development of ethical standards for online research. They do not specifically address obtaining an institutional review board approval because it was not provided back then. So this whole idea of having the participation, the approval of the participants in the research were not, were not provided, or were not, highlighted, back then. So that was the limitation. And later on, the IRB boards, they started, and the approval of participants was then focused on. Okay, so this is the first example. What did they do? The researchers in the study, the researchers analyzed the reviewed materials from 49. How many programs did they have? They had 49 youth media programs. How? Inductively identifying main categories such as youth media as a tool for empowerment and youth media as a tool for social action. Okay, and there were of course subcategories like what? Like building leadership skills, promoting leadership and self-confidence, and telling their own stories. Okay, let's go on. We have another example on qualitative content analysis, which is, which falls under the social work, which is for Chan et al. In 2012. Those authors collected narratives about contemporary filial piety and end-of-life care from how many caregivers? From 15 Hong Kong Chinese caregivers. Okay, the sample included stage 4 terminal cancer patients at one hospital. So they examined, some patients of cancer with prior University Institutional Review Board approval. So they had the IRB. The researchers solicited caregivers through purposive sampling. So they used the purposive method. The researcher used what they called a modified ground theory approach to coding. So they used the grounded theory. The approach they used is the grounded theory. Yet they also stated that they sought to generate descriptive themes within the participants' narratives rather than a conceptual model or mid-level theory. So they focused on having, they focused on description of the categories and subcategories. Okay, and of course with their approval, the approval of the participants. Okay, what should we focus on in here? Okay, the researcher used the category reciprocal relationships. Here, let's go down. Here, the researchers used the category reciprocal relationships to describe the more flexible nature of these interactions in contrast to traditional expectations of difference to the parents' wishes. Okay, and participants might not have used the specific terminology of the category label. So the word label was not, used. Therefore, interpretive analysis was required. The researchers captured the meaning of the participants' narratives. There was a focus on the narratives of the participants in the codes. Though the specific content of their stories differed, no statistics were used by Chan and colleagues. Okay, so no statistics were used. A focus on description of the categories and subcategories, and there was a focus on the narratives. This is qualitative content analysis. So this analysis can be a useful research method for the study of diverse population. So if you've got population of many kinds that is diverse, it may be undertaken in a culturally competent manner to overcome a number of limitations present in other research methods. Okay, let's go now to the research purposes of qualitative content analysis. Why do we do it? What is the research purposes of this qualitative content analysis? It's important to focus on the description of meaning. Here we're describing, we're not explaining. We're describing meaning. We're focusing on narratives. Okay, we're also, how many research design here? We've got exploratory, we've got explanatory of two kinds, the explanatory tests of discriminant function and the explanatory tests of hypotheses. Okay, let's read. Research purposes. So we're describing meaning again. there is an optimal method for describing meaning in communications. Okay, one aspect of such description is frequently to categorize the manifest and or latent and contextualized content into a narrative summary. Okay, so we are categorizing, we're ordering these meanings that are manifest or latent and or latent into what? Into a narrative summary. The subcategorization may be topical, formal, or hierarchical. Qualitative content analysis generally view their approach as more focused on what? On description than on conceptual development. So we're not focusing on the concepts, themes, and ideas. No, we are generating new themes and ideas. We are focusing on description. Description of what? Of narratives. Here, Kippendorf has identified 3 kinds of research designs here to the qualitative content analysis. What are the research designs? So if you've got a question on the research designs in qualitative content analysis, you've got 3 designs or 3 kinds. I have previously mentioned them now. The first one is the exploratory descriptive, in which knowledge of content and context is described or more clearly defined. So the first one is the descriptive and exploratory. Okay, the second one, explanatory tests of hypotheses. Okay, so you're testing hypotheses and they examine the merit and utility of specified analytical constructs. And the last one is the explanatory test of discriminant function. Okay, that affirm or negate the explanatory power and utility of specified constructs. Very good. Now let's go. All this is important actually. Qualitative content analysis can also serve as a starting point for later quantification and explanatory research using discriminant function or path analysis techniques. Namier also views qualitative content analysis as a potential first step toward the later quantities and quantities analysis. So it can be a starting point for the quantities analysis. There are, however, no clear examples of such uses in the social work literature to date. Until now, we don't have that. Epistemological foundations of qualitative content analysis. What about epistemology here? I have previously said that it is constructivist. Okay, that is the first thing. Then we will talk about some multiple perspectives and uses terms like validity and reliability. Nothing is found in English or language German literature. Okay, let's read. Okay, here. A key step to select an epistemology to guide the research project. Epistemological choices influence in important ways several later decisions about the research methods and interpretation of research results. The literature, it's important to notice that the literature on qualitative content analysis does not explicitly address the role of epistemology. Okay, some scholars argue that, let's go down. It says that some scholars argue that all qualitative research is a constructivist in epistemology. Okay. Now, what do we mean by the word constructivist? Here it says that the constructivist research is defined by an epistemological stance that social work is the active product of human knowers, that knowledge is situated and relative, that it varies across people and their social groups, and that it is context dependent. So the constructivist approach means that you're depending on what? On the context. That is the first one. You're depending on the social knowledge as a product of what? Of human knowers. It varies across people. Experiences in the natural and the social world are constructed using the interpretive categories of one's reference group. There are multiple realities based on people's varied interpretive constructs and categories. More on the constructivist is here. Constructivists do not deny the reality of the external world. Rather, they understand that knowledge of the world is related to the ways in which we actively organize our experiences of it. In many respects, qualitative content analysis presumes that contextualized and latent communications may not be immediately evident to all readers. That's why it's complex. It's hard to know the latent meaning. So differences in interpretation are understood as inevitable. Yeah, so I can explain things, and my colleague can explain the same thing but with another perspective. So because people differ, that's why it is constructivist. So what is important for research is to make explicit how and why interpretations were made. How to make useful and meaningful interpretations of latent and contextualized data is central to qualitative content analysis. Okay, let's go to some information on the explicitly adopting a constructivist epistemology for qualitative content analysis has consequences for how the method is conceptualized and undertaken. Here we're talking about how is the method itself, it is conceptualized and undertaken. We mean by that we use positivist quantitative terminology here, like validity and reliability is problematic. We cannot use such terms like validity and reliability here from the constructivist epistemology, because many qualitative researchers acknowledge multiple ways of knowing and multiple perspectives on a single event or idea. Here there's more focus on credibility and trustworthiness. So these two words, as I have previously noted in the first part of this video, that both validity and reliability were replaced by words like credibility and trustworthiness. Okay, so they are actually used, those two words, in place of validity, reflecting multiple standpoints and meanings. Okay, because the qualitative content analysis focuses on the constructivist because of the different perspectives and explanations people have for a single thing, because people differ in their perspectives, in their culture, in their knowledge, in their differences. That's why there's here a much focus on the comparing and contrasting between group differences. There's much focus on the constructivist school. So there's focus on credibility and trustworthiness out of this perspective, because of constructivist. Okay, so we're not focusing here on validity and reliability, rather on credibility and trustworthiness. So the concepts of credibility and trustworthiness do not assume simple correspondence between facts or experiences and the ways people describe or make meaning of these facts or experiences. Further, qualitative content analysis generally seeks to be meaningful in context rather than universally applicable. Conformability and accuracy, trustworthiness replace statistical approaches. Okay, we said in the beginning that we focused on the fact that we don't use statistics. So what do we use here? We depend on the accuracy, on the trustworthiness, on credibility, conformability. They all replace statistics. Okay, especially in studies using a constructivist epistemology. Generalizability is limited here. We don't generalize much. Okay, let's go now to the research designs. What do you think are the research designs used here? The first one, which is the descriptive, because we're describing meaning. I have previously said that. We've got descriptive, explorative, and exploratory, and both, explanatory of both kinds. So this is more like a redundancy, because I have previously said that, said some information on the research designs. So again, they are descriptive in focus and in design. Focus on description, While the method clearly describes key meanings within a data set, it may be useful as an explanatory research design used to identify new ways of looking at events and communications. That is, qualitative content analysis of new phenomena or diverse populations or novel settings may stimulate simultaneously explore new intellectual territory as it describes what is found. Okay, can it be exploratory? Yes, it can be descriptive. That is number one. It can be exploratory. It can be explanatory. So we've got 3 research designs, or both. We can have it both. We can have more than one in a single study. Schreier points out that qualitative content analysis may be used for evaluation, comparative designs, and even in explanatory research designs. That is important. Let's go to marrying. What do you think? Here's the perspective here. It says that marrying further suggests that qualitative content analysis may be used to more fully explicate the meaning of a text. Okay, with the feature of expansion and enlarging on the original material. Let's go to data reduction. Okay. Okay, now as for the data reduction, okay, Schreier states that this approach, which is the qualitative content analysis, it may involve data reduction through the analytical use of descriptive categories or themes. The goal in such studies is to identify and highlight the most relevant and meaningful passages of text. Okay, so do we reduce data? Yes, we reduce data, we summarize data, categorize data, summarize the larger data sets. We generate content types at the same time. We're summarizing and we're generating. That's why it is expansive. So researchers here can interrogate, can expand, enlarge data to explain its meaning and content. Okay, so let's go here to the second paragraph. It says more about this. So again, as I have said, that it summarizes large data sets and at the same time expand it with new typologies of content. Okay, so there is an enlargement of the data in order to explicate its meaning. While reports of qualitative content analysis may provide a reductive summary of that data under study, the process of generating this summary may be expansive. So we have an expansive feature here rather than reductive. We don't reduce data, we expand it. Such an explanation of the data during analysis is a key feature of the qualitative content analysis. Okay, let's go to the target audiences. What do you think are the target audiences? Where do we use this qualitative content analysis? Do we use it in education? Where do we use it in social work? It's actually very widely used in social work, as I have previously said in the Word document. So it can be used in youth media, in financial planning, in professional education. The most important thing that such efforts in the qualitative content analysis involve abductive inferences. Okay, and it's okay. Let's read now. Okay, it appears that most of these studies target other academics and practitioners as their key audiences. Okay, it says here that advocacy efforts based on this approach routinely involve abductive inferences. That is, what do we mean by abductive? It means that authors use the qualitative content analysis findings as a jumping off point for wider advocacy claims that extend somewhat beyond the data. This is attributed to its expansive feature. Okay, let's go down here. It says that these advocacy efforts may extend abductively beyond the actual data, showing how the data can inform applied improvements in practice and policy. Let's go to the ethical issues. Okay. to the ethical issues here. But before that, let's go to the begin. Let's go back to the beginning here of this subsection. It says that very few content analyses are found in the literature. 28 articles and 5 dissertations only. You know, can you see that? 28 articles and only 5 dissertations between 1979 and 2014 were listed in the social work abstracts databases as of March 2015 until this moment. These studies explore diverse topics including youth media, pro-anorexia perspectives, financial planning, social policy, and professional education. Okay, so it appears that most of these studies, they target other academics. So we're not mainly talking about only social work. Okay, so it can include other academics. Okay, let's go now to the ethical issues. The same thing, you know, it is also it's actually repeated from the basic and the qualitative content analysis. It's important to have the approval of the participants in your research. You have to do it as a research before conducting your research, and it's so important. So researchers doing any form of content analysis should seek review of their projects by an authorized ethics review board. Okay, these analyses, which are the qualitative, they may employ either existing data sets or newly collected data, where existing data are used and drawn from materials in the public domain. Review by an institutional ethics panel may not be required. So sometimes it is required, sometimes it is not. You know, some studies are exempted from such approval. Everything has its own conditions. Studies drawing on newly collected data from human research participants will always require institutional ethics review. You always have to get the approval of those human participants. It appears, especially in the newly collected data, it appears that qualitative content analysis are more likely to involve the collection of new data. There are basic or interpretive content analyses, though all approaches to content analysis may use such data. Okay, let's go to the sampling here, to this section. We will talk about some samples in qualitative content analysis. So what should we focus on regarding the sampling here? You can have, as I have previously said regarding the sampling, methods or scheme, that you've got probability and non-probability. Probability, samples are used in order to generalize your results, okay? But we should understand that always the unprobable samples, especially the purposive, are more representative of the population. That's why we've got more validity or credibility in this, here in this case. So we have more credibility for the unprobable samples, especially the purposive ones, but we cannot generalize these results. Okay, so that's very important to focus on here. So as for the sampling, the nature of the sample may strongly affect the credibility and applicability of a qualitative content analysis. So the sampling, as for the sampling here in this analysis, is it multiple stage? It is, does it have more than one stage or multiple stages? No, it's a single process. It's a single stage process. It has fixed steps occurring before data collection. Conceptualization is complete and often misleading. Qualitative sampling is better understood as an ongoing iterative process co-occurring with data collection and data analysis. What do you mean by with the word iterative? It means copied. Such iterative sampling, is it important to have iterative sampling? Yeah, it's very important, because just like it seems like the priori method, so you have samples that are already used. So you use them in obtaining an adequate and thorough sample for descriptive studies of groups or other open systems that do not have fixed and invariant boundaries. The iterative sampling is so important as it helps in providing a complete basis for theory development. It helps you in developing theories. Terminology related to qualitative research sampling is used inconsistently in the research literature, reducing clarity for readers and learners alike. Okay, as for sampling and the quality of the data sets, okay, we should understand that samples must be what? Representative. They must be appropriate, relevant to your research question, whether they are fixed prior to data collection or iterative, whether they are already there, iterative, or they are fixed, or they are, found prior to data collection. Also, another condition, these we can say that these are the samples for the conditions of the samples here. They must be first relevant. Second, samples must be adequate to the exploration of the research question. It must be adequate. And okay, another hazard. We've got some, hazards of sampling. The first one is provided by RAID 1999, who noted that the research samples may fail to provide requisite information. A study of couples' interactions may include only one partner rather than both. Such a sample is neither appropriate nor adequate. We gotta have the opinion of the two, okay, the two pair, the two items, okay. Another haphazard or hazard of sample selection prior to data collection is that the obtained sample may not provide information that is adequate for thorough explanation of the research question. So when it is inadequate, it is irrelevant, so it would not give me the information I need as a researcher. Okay, now a third standard here for qualitative research samples is that samples must be thorough in the sense that they include potentially disconfirming or elaborating evidence. Yet another strength. Here we have another strength for the iterative sampling is that there is both the expectation and opportunity to see cases that can challenge or enhance the researcher's initial understanding of the research question. Let's go to Elo et al. Now this person or these authors, they state that a disadvantage of purposive sampling is that it can be difficult for the reader to judge the trustworthiness of sampling if full details are not provided. That's why, you see, yes, it is representative, but you cannot judge its trustworthiness because you need more details, and purposive sampling does not give you all the details. Okay, further, readers often have to demonstrate if the results of a particular sample are transferable to people and settings of their interest. So can you generalize the results here? No. Sample or small purposive samples often point to potentially important and useful results in an exploratory manner, but critical thinking and additional research are often needed to ensure transferability of results to other settings and populations. This was focused on at the beginning as I have provided you. Let's go to the qualitative sampling terminology. The qualitative research may employ probability sampling methods if they adequately address the research question and purposes. So the probability, samples are preferable here if they are relevant to the research question, to the researcher's purposes, okay? So, however, most qualitative studies and qualitative content analysis, they employ non-probability or purposive samples. There are several forms of purposive sampling. Why do we intend to adopt the purposive sampling here, though it is not, though we cannot, generalize the results? because purposive sampling is employed to raise awareness, to provide new perspectives, and provide descriptions of events, beliefs, and actions, because they are so detailed, because they give you a full description of the whole population. That's why it's so important. Okay, let's go to critical case sampling in the next page. Okay, critical case sampling focuses on theoretically determined key informants. Critical cases are selected to provide particularly valuable perspectives and insights. Critical cases are so good because you can study them across time, and they may be pivotal bellwether cases or cases that provide additional theoretical and perspective richness in contrast to typical cases. We've got another kind of sampling, which is intensity. What does it mean? It has a similar logic. Here, when we have intensity, it means that cases are selected that are theoretically determined to offer depth and or breadth on a given event, belief, or other topic of interest. So you are studying more deeply. Okay, in both methods, transferability or generalization is not again and again. They are, generability is not typically sought nor expected here. Information richness on a selected topic is the key concern here, because it is more representative of the population. It has more details, more richness. Unique, unusual, or extreme case sampling methods are techniques that are also purposive. All these are techniques used for purposive samples. Let's go to the last technique, which is the maximum variation sampling, and this one, which is the maximum. What does it mean? It has a similar purpose but requires initial efforts to identify and include multiple perspectives on dimensions of interest to the researcher. The completeness of the obtained sample remains uncertain, however, and transferability is analytic rather than quantitative and probabilistic. Combined typical case and maximum variation sampling would be a strong plan for many qualitative content analysis studies. If you combine all these techniques, it would be better. Let's go to know something about the iterative sampling. As we said, that the iterative sampling is repeated. It means the word repeated. Some researchers here argue that an iterative or cyclical approach to sampling yields optimal samples. Iterative sampling, again, is so important here. It's a process through which researchers review and revise. So what do we mean by iterative sampling, or what do researchers do here? Researchers review and revise their initial sampling plan based on the results of the preliminary data collection. So it is important, kind of a revision of all your analysis. Okay, newly discovered information is then used to guide future sampling decisions. It helps other researchers, so it is kind of predictive, we can say. Okay, it's a cycle of sampling. Data collection, data analysis is employed to identify gaps. Sometimes you can see some shortcomings. You can solve many problems here in your analysis. So it's kind of re-examination of your whole analysis. When researchers use qualitative content analysis in exploratory manner, small samples without an iterative sampling process can yield innovative and informative results. When researchers use qualitative content analysis in descriptive research designs, however, an iterative sampling plan should yield more complete and more nuanced research results. Data collection in qualitative content analysis. What about data collection? Okay. Data collection in contemporary qualitative content analysis is most often based on generated gathered verbal data such as interview transcripts. Okay, and it says about, it tells us here about open-ended questions that they allow for a wide range of responses, and this technique is optimal. So good. So researchers also can use interviews that are semi-structured. How? Effectively, though they must take care not to privilege one perspective over others. Okay, the self-awareness in the next paragraph. It says here, the self-awareness and reflective skill of the researcher is vital in planning and undertaking data collection. Here it says more about the data collection, techniques used in data collection. Let's go to coding to know something about it. Coding in qualitative content analysis. We said, or I said at the beginning, that we've got both deductive and inductive codes here. So the first step in coding qualitative data is to become very familiar with the data set. You should understand the data itself. Some scholars call this step immersion in the data. You've got to immerse yourself in the data. Such immersion in the data set provides a sense of the study as a whole and of its component parts. It helps build awareness so you can get nearer to your context, to understand it, and it's so important here. The goal is for the researcher to become informed about your content, about the context, to notice the key content and omissions of what might be expected content or perspectives. What is the purpose of coding? Is it important to code? Yes. We do it to develop new knowledge and address fully the research question, the frames and the frames of the study. Rigorous coding requires wide-ranging, in-depth knowledge of the data set. Okay, coding is so important, and researchers use coding to identify and describe key meanings. So we describe here, we should understand, we don't explain here in qualitative content analysis, we describe the key meanings within texts of many kinds, whether interviews, images, textbooks, whatever, okay, or social work cases. Coding is also used to reduce, to summarize, and also to expand. You should remember here, we're not reducing data, we're also expanding data, as Schreier 2012 stated. Okay, so we use it also descriptively. We describe meaning. Let's go down to the next page. Okay, now there's a focus on the themes. Okay, many categories are also called themes or dimensions in the qualitative content literature. The term themes, it is found in the American literature, though its definition is broad and often imprecise. However, the term dimensions is also used, but it may be confusing to some readers familiar with other qualitative research methods, such as the grounded theory. The dimension here, there, in the grounded theory, it refers to another thing. It refers actually to a rank-ordered concept. In qualitative content analysis, main categories are most often nominal level categories that are mutually exclusive and exhaustive to the focal content. Okay, is it important to have subcategories? Of course. In all coding, we've got categories and subcategories. Is it important to have subcategories? Yes. What is their main function? They serve to structure the description within each category while also providing more details and nuance. Subcategories may also be viewed as nominal, ordinal, interval level measures. All coding requires that the researcher make ongoing determination of what is relevant. Again, we should focus on the relevance of your codes and content versus that which is irrelevant. The process of creating a coding frame or a list of codes relevant to a specific project may be undertaken. How? Deductively, inductively, or both. Can we use both of them in a single study? Yes, there's no problem in that. Let's go to these two approaches in more detail. Here it says that qualitative content analysts use inductive coding to create data-grounded categories and to ensure that the views and voices of research participants are given priority over the ideas and theories of the researchers. Okay, used in exploratory and descriptive designs, the inductive coding can help keep the development of coding categories close to and grounded in the original data. So both are very important. Now I will read some pieces of information on each one in an isolated manner. So the first one is the inductive one. As for the inductive coding development and application, how you develop it, how you apply it as a researcher in your study, here says that researcher first, in the inductive one, they first formulate a working definition of the category, drawing on the textual material that best captures the meaning of the content found in the original data. So you use the open coding actually. So in the first, in the inductive coding, you use the open coding following Glaser and Strauss in 1967. These are actually, the open coding is very suggested, it is often suggested. So this open coding is substantive rather than focused on conceptual development. We don't focus on conceptualization here. We're focusing on describing the content. Remember this. Researchers here identify relevant categories that, okay, so researchers identify relevant categories and label them how? Descriptively. Coding can be over-inclusive as the researcher learns and refines the meaning of the text. Each coding category should be relevant again. Each coding category. So the conditions of the categories here in the qualitative content analysis, they must be relevant, close to the original content, and modifiable. Another technique is the use of vivo quotes. What do I mean by that? Here, the vivo quotes, according to Glaser and Strauss and Corbin, which use a word or a short phrase from the original content to literally reflect the essence of the content's meaning. It resembles, the basic in the use of a certain word, but in the basic you extract these words, you're counting them. Here we don't count. We use words or a short phrase from the original content to literally reflect what, the exact meaning of the content. Okay, let's go down there. It says that we've got several publications. Okay, here. Several publications self-described as qualitative content analysis refer to the use of Glaser and Strauss 1967 grounded theory as their method of coding. So what is the method of coding? Is the grounded theory for Glaser and Strauss 1967. Okay, so more about this grounded theory. More information. Here it says that the goal of grounded theory is to develop concepts and ultimately a working theory that captures the views and actions of the research participants. So you're developing new things. Anything that falls under developing new things, new ideas, new themes, this falls under the qualitative content analysis. That's why grounded theory is used here. It is not a descriptive research method, but a conceptual method, as should be evident from the name of the method. In contrast, qualitative content analysis is most often used descriptively rather than to develop concepts and theory. The yield or the result of qualitative content analysis is most often what? Descriptive. So, should we use it or not? Conceptualization and theory are not often part of the method. In turn, the aim of coding in qualitative content analysis is not to generate coding here. As for coding, we're talking about coding. We're not using coding for generating concepts and theory. No, coding are used only to describe. Coding is used descriptively only. We're not using it for generating concepts or theories or something. Okay, so through coding we only describe the meaning and actions of the research participants and texts. More on categories, but actually here we're focusing on how to develop categories as a researcher. When you develop the codes, what would be the next step? The next step is to determine which codes are more overarching and which are subsidiary to those central codes. So you should use a hierarchy of codes. Okay. Now, using the revised coding frame, the coding process then continues to completion. When coding of all texts is completed, another summative reliability check of the coding frame is completed. According to Marrying 2000, both the formative and the summative reliability checks may lead to iterative revisions of the research question or changes in the coding categories. After the coding frame is finalized, interpretation of these inductively generated result is undertaken. So after you end the whole the first creation of your codes, you can interpret these inductively generated results, and you have to do this for your reader. Okay, that's why it's important to have something called a map. This is called a map. Maps are used to interpret what the researcher or how the researcher used these codes or how he created them. Okay, so here's a description on the map of how the codes were created that is credible and clear to the reader. In studies using the constructivist epistemology, as in here, readers will be the final arbiters of the credibility and persuasiveness of the researcher's coding frame and the interpretation of the data sufficient of the data. Okay, let's go to the deductive coding application. As a researcher, how do you use the deductive coding? Some models of the qualitative analysis begin with an orienting theory or evaluation question that allows the deductive development of at least some of the codes used in the study. So, as a researcher, how do you do this? In deductive coding, prior empirical research and theory are employed to derive some categories. Marrying claims that the process for developing deductive categories are poorly developed here. We don't have much on the deductive categories in the qualitative analysis. Okay, she suggests that deductive category development, how does it begin? She says that it begins with the identification of main and subcategories from the existing literature. After coding is completed, here it says at the end of this paragraph that after coding is completed, the researchers complete a summative reliability check to again ensure reliability and the consistent application of coding rules. Okay, now is it important to have to focus on the validity of the deductively generated coding frame? No. So she actually, Marrying, does not directly discuss this validity aspect, but researchers should also examine some points. Like what? The researchers should examine how will the coded data have addressed the research question if the coding data were relevant, and how well the coded material fits with and elaborates on the data set. Again, since coding in the qualitative content analysis may be contextual, it depends on the context, and it may draw on latent meaning, the creation of a transparent map to show readers how the codes were deductively created and applied is so important. I have previously said, even in all the three approaches of content analysis, the researcher must explain to the reader how he used the codes, how he how he used them, how he created them, okay, and on what basis. Can we have a combined set? Yes, we can use both the deductive and the inductive coding. In the last paragraph, it says here that employing this combined deductive-inductive coding plan, it requires that the researcher clearly explicate the sources of each kind of coding. You should say all the sources of your coding, how each category is developed, how it was refined, and this must be transparent to the reader, and it must be illustrated with examples from the analysis. Steps used to ensure reliability and validity or trustworthiness and credibility must be clearly explained to the reader. What about validity and reliability? Do we have this? We said we have credibility and trustworthiness here. So, much of the qualitative analysis literature uses traditional quantitative terminology to describe validity and reliability in coding. of course with the use or dependence on Cohen's kappa statistic. Okay, marrying states, he's a person, a male author. He states that a value of greater than 70% should be used, or 70.70 should be used to establish adequacy in inter-rater reliability. Coded text segments should also reflect the meaning of the categories to which the researchers assign them. He also suggests that the triangulation, is as a useful technique to establish validity in qualitative content analysis. This resembles the interpretive. In the interpretive, we used also the triangulation of sources. More recent qualitative concepts such as credibility, authenticity, and trustworthiness are not often found here in this literature, because I have previously said that we focus here on credibility and trustworthiness. Okay, Schreyer argues that reliability is emphasized over validity in basic content analysis. While validity is emphasized in qualitative content analysis. Okay, this is only a repetition of what was mentioned before. What should we do in order to ensure reliability? To ensure reliability, pairs or teams of researchers often code the same textual material and compare their results, though there must be comparison. As in basic analysis, discussion of the differences will initially serve to both identify areas of agreement, differences, and interpretation. Initial training of research teams will improve coding consistently and will improve the validity of coding. It's important to have teams or coders, more than one coder. And Marrying does not specifically mention that such training, but his formative and summative reviews of the coded categories may serve similar functions. Okay, let's go down to data analysis and qualitative content analysis in a brief explanation. As for data analysis, what do you think? Okay, Schreyer again states that the main analysis is complete once the coding of categories is finalized. Yes, she describes the final step of data analysis in qualitative analysis as preparing the data in a manner that clearly answers the research question. This may involve developing a format of presentation that shows how the subunits of coded data collectively address the overall research question. This analysis focuses on reporting of the of the descriptive categories or themes together with together with the illustrations of evidence that supports those categories. Okay, so as for the data analysis, this phase involves what exactly here in qualitative analysis? It involves reorganizing. So you are reorganizing and reordering the coded categories to summarize the key content of the data. Researchers here undertake this organization. Why? What is the aim? The aim is to fully address the research question and reveal content of interest and importance to readers, and of course with the use of many techniques. What about data analysis and presentation narrative format? Okay, the qualitative content analysis focuses on the narratives, describing those narratives, the narrative format. In this form of analysis, what do we mean by the narrative format? It means that the researchers identify the core categories or themes and use these categories as selection headings in the report. Each core theme here in the narrative theme is interpreted in a summary manner and illustrated using quotations that show how text or participants portray their original ideas or views, and clarifying how categories were developed and how they were developed in more details. So categories or themes may merely be summarized. Why? To highlight the content, or the reader may be shown how more contextualized interpretations were made using latent content. This contextualization is so important, and it may be as simple as showing how sarcasm or other figures of speech influencing the meaning of a quotation. Just a little explanation. So there's no deep explanation here. More complex interpretations of meaning and or context may show how distinct quotations are related and shape meaning making. Narrative forms of data analysis can be also what? Persuasive, right? Yeah, it can be very persuasive actually. Yeah, let's go down to data analysis presentation, the matrix format. Okay, before going to the matrix here, you've got some examples, but before that here, comparison tables. Comparison tables are so important. We said in the beginning that we have to compare and contrast the group differences. Okay, we've got an example on that which was provided by Miles and Huberman, who know that comparison and contrast are very useful themes or methods actually of qualitative analysis and display. When they use this analysis to address a comparative research question, charts and matrices may be very useful for data analysis and presentation because it compares text or participants' responses within a single site. More on this, you can read that here. The use of the flowcharts talks more about the flowcharts because of their importance in providing information and with analysis. Okay, on the examination of processes, okay, or events unfolding over time, the flowchart can clearly summarize key steps in such processes over time. It shows also the effects of varying contexts with the different views of people. Okay, some examples on that. Mashi, Bayer, and Turner examined how social justice was integrated with clinical social work in published articles. More on that you can read on that. We've got another example. As you can see, these are some flowcharts, okay, and conceptual diagram here from Mashi, Bayer, and Turner, as you can see, about social justice. This is an example. Another table is provided here on the matrix presentation of Chinese children's views about death. Okay. Here on that, Schreier states that using frequencies is so important. So something about the frequencies used for reporting qualitative content analysis is very helpful actually, as these statistics show specifically how many participant or text gave voice to each category or concept. This method is so important to orient the reader to findings from a large data set and to show the relative prevalence of each category. Okay, so these techniques are so important and useful in this analysis. They can use both, researchers here can use both narrative and many different visual themes or methods of data display to inform their readers. Okay, and these visual techniques of data presentation can summarize large data sets. Research self-reflection is the last thing to highlight here for the qualitative content analysis. What do we mean by reflexivity? It means here that it addresses the researcher engagement in explicit self-aware reviews of several kinds. These may range from individual self-awareness to self-reflection to intersubjective or collaborative processes to critical analysis. Actually, we've got 5 variants as provided by Finlay in 2002. We've got the introspection, the intersubjective reflection, the mutual collaboration, the social critique, and the last one is the discursive deconstruction. Okay, that's it for the qualitative content analysis. This was so long, however it was so interesting. Thank you so much for watching us. You can post anything in the comments, you can ask any questions regarding this content. Thank you so much again, and have a great day.